Want help to grow your business? Download BRiN, the world's first business advisor in your pocket. To find out more, visit BRiN.ai or search the App Store today.
Hello and welcome to The Human Element. My name's Nicole Wales. I'm the founder and managing director of Human Tribe and your host for the Human Element series. Today we're here to talk about why it pays to have emotionally intelligent people in your business. Now, a lot of people in business have heard of this term emotional intelligence. There's certainly a lot of articles and posts around how high emotional intelligence, which is often referred to as EQ or EI, is related to performance outcomes. Today, what I'd like to do is get back to basics with emotional intelligence, because generally what I find when I talk about emotional intelligence, there's a lot of interest, but there's not a lot of understanding. So what we're going to start with is what is emotional intelligence, and then we're going to look at the business case for emotional intelligence. And we're not just talking about the financial business case, we're also looking at other benefits, such as benefits with staff and with customers, and things like mental health in the workplace as well. Today we're joined by a true expert when it comes to emotional intelligence. Dr. Ben Palmer is the founder and CEO of Genos International. And Genos International is a business that specialises in assessing and developing emotional intelligence. Ben, welcome to The Human Element.
Hi Nicole, it's great to be here.
Excellent, and I really appreciate your time and you sharing your expertise with our audience today on this subject matter.
It's a pleasure.
What I'd like to do first is discuss what is emotional intelligence, because as I said in my intro, I genuinely mean that. I find when I talk about it, there's a lot of interest, there's appetite for it, but I don't believe there's a good understanding of emotional intelligence. So what can you share with us?
I think to really understand the power and the value of emotional intelligence in business, it's important to take a step back and understand the role that emotions play in our lives. And so if I can start there and then lead into emotional intelligence, I will. When you look into the science of emotions, you see that the way we feel influences three very important parts of ourselves. Firstly, the way we feel influences our thoughts and the decisions that we make. You know, you might not ask the boss for a pay rise or more resources if the boss is in a bad mood. The scientific term for that's mood congruent thought. And there are many, many examples of that sort of thing. So the way we feel influences the way we think and the choices that we make. Secondly, the way we feel influences our behaviour. If you think about it, emotions show up in your tone of voice, in your facial expressions, in your body language. And because of that fact, they're very fundamental to how we communicate, collaborate, connect, build rapport, and so on. And finally, one of the most robust, well-established findings in the social sciences is there's a direct link between the way you feel and the way you perform. And if you think about it, you know, anyone who's worked in a workplace will know that people often perform their best at work when they feel valued, when they feel cared for, when they feel informed, when they feel like they're doing meaningful work. And people, whether they're conscious of it or not, don't perform well at work when they feel overly stressed, worried about things like their job security, when they feel frustrated with their colleagues, when they feel upset about what they might feel is being done to them by their workplace and so on. So the way we feel influences these three very important parts of ourselves, the way we think, the way we behave, and the way we perform. And that influence is both productive, you know, emotions can really help us think very, very well, can help us behave in a way that's engaging and inspiring to others, and obviously can influence our performance in productive and unproductive ways.
Can I ask a question around that? So you use the example with performance, and so say you've got employees that don't feel valued or potentially they're not communicated well to. Are there sometimes cases when you have the same employees that are being treated like that, but some people, because of their emotional intelligence, respond better to that? Is that kind of where we're heading?
I think emotionally intelligent people certainly would respond better in that kind of environment, absolutely. But our research suggests that emotionally intelligent people are often more likely to leave that kind of environment as well. So there is a very strong link between how emotionally intelligent you are and how resilient you are, by
Yep.
way of example.
Yep.
But I think high levels of emotional intelligence also make us very aware about environments that are or aren't healthy.
So then, that's really interesting. So then potentially if I wasn't as high in emotional intelligence, I'll just stay there, complain about it, but not do anything about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's this concept of things like learned helplessness, for example, and the thing that is interesting, again, with the science of emotions is when we feel negative emotions, our thinking is narrowed, our perspective is limited, it's harder to see the forest for the trees, we become problem focused. When you have positive emotional experiences, you tend to think more laterally and more creatively, you see more options, you think more deeply, and so people talk about getting in a rut, and that's a very a phenomenon that you can absolutely see in the science of emotions.
Yeah, really interesting. So are we ready to talk about this now?
Yeah, I wanted to use this slide to talk about why this actually occurs. So why does the way we feel influence the way we think, behave and perform?
Okay.
So if you look into some of the latest neuroscience, that is the study of the brain and how it's actually functioning.
And sorry to interrupt, there's been a lot of advances with that recently, right?
Lots of advances. So we
Yep.
can really look at the way the brain is literally operating now with some of the latest advances in neuroscience. So what I've done with this slide is tried to describe, if you like, the phenomenon between the way we feel, our decisions and our behaviour. So
Okay.
at the start of this slide, we've got events, right? Now, whether it's seeing a snake in the grass or the way somebody just talked to you in a meeting, the first thing that happens neurologically is these very non-conscious, very quick, very automatic processing areas of the brain, which involve things like the thalamus and the amygdala, the hippocampus. Its role is to look at that event and determine whether it's useful and a reward or not useful or a threat.
Okay.
Right, friend or foe type
Yep,
thing.
yep.
And it signals or sends this very binary good bad kind of signal, which is an emotion usually, to the prefrontal cortex, which is involved in helping us determine good from bad, better from best, the likely outcome of this event and what we should actually do about it. So we have a feeling first that we're not always conscious of,
Yes.
and then a thought that precedes it, and then the behaviour after that.
And this is happening almost subconsciously, could you say? It's
85% of the time, the research suggests that we're not conscious of the way we feel and this mechanism that's going on
Wow.
almost continuously all
Yep.
the time throughout the day. So that sort of stuff is, okay, that's a bit interesting. What's more interesting, though, is when the emotional brain, or those areas that are collectively described as the emotional brain, generates a positive emotion. Positive emotions have what's Barbara Fredrickson has termed a broaden and build effect on the way we think.
Okay.
That is to say, positive emotions help us think more laterally, more creatively. They release dopamine, which is important for interest and learning. So what's the behaviour we show? Well, we show more interest.
Yes.
We pay more attention.
Yes.
We ask more questions. And businesses sometimes describe that kind of behaviour as engaged behaviour, by way of example, which I
Yep.
know you've been talking about in your show. Conversely, negative emotions, as I was saying before, these have the opposite effect. They tend to narrow our perspective, limit our interpretation of events, and cause us to show somewhat disengaged behaviours. So in a meeting that you're not finding useful, you might look at your phone. Your
Yep.
mind might wander off elsewhere and think about other things that are going on at work or outside of it. At a slightly more higher level, so the emotion becomes a bit stronger, you might be, say, slightly and not consciously passive-aggressive or defensive about what's being said. When the emotion's very strong, the effect is so strong that it actually dampens the ability of the thinking brain.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Yep.
all of us would have had that experience of
Yeah.
being so upset we can't think straight.
Yeah.
The reason that occurs is the brain's also, you can think of it metaphorically like a series of muscles working around each other. When the emotional brain perceives that event as a strong threat and it's really starts firing and getting
Yep.
very active, what it's literally doing is drawing blood glucose away from your prefrontal cortex. Thus, why we think of all the good things we could have said half an hour later, by way of example.
Yes.
Yeah. So this slide just summarises, if you like, the fact that the way we feel
Yeah.
influences the way we think and the way we behave, and therefore the outcomes that we generate.
It's, I love the statistics, and, I've used this myself with clients. I love the statistic that you just gave, though, before. I hadn't picked that up before, that 85% on average emotions we feel and we have no conscious awareness of.
There's some really other interesting things around that to do with the topic of unconscious bias. So by way of example, people might be familiar with the fact that in America, only 15% of men are over 6 foot tall, yet 60% of male CEOs are over 6 foot tall. And the theory under this is that we unconsciously feel safer with taller men in power positions.
Wow.
And there are those sort of trait-based unconscious biases that exist. Most of us, whether we've really tapped into it consciously or not, probably have these sorts of biases for a lot of different things in life. If I think about it for myself, do I like to see a fat doctor or a thin doctor? Most of us like to think we don't have these biases, but they actually exist, and they exist partly because of this phenomenon. There's been some other great research in that area too on state-based biases that are caused by emotions. So what's a state-based bias? Well, the best example I can think of in Europe, there's been some great sort of studies looking at small liquor shops that just sell two different types of wine, like French wine and German wine, by way of example. If you play French music in the background, what do you think happens to sales of French wine? They go up by about 70%. And if you change the CD over and play German music, almost the exact opposite occurs. You sell lots more German wine. So the way we feel unconsciously influencing our decisions all the time in ways that we're aware of, and most of the time actually in ways that we're sometimes not aware of.
Wow.
Yeah.
Really interesting. Well, Ben, we need to take a short break. I'd love to continue this conversation. I could talk to you. Thank goodness we've got you for a couple of episodes. I could talk to you for hours.
Sure.
My name's Nicole Wales. You're watching The Human Element and why it pays to have emotionally intelligent people in your business. We'll be back with you shortly. Hello and welcome back to The Human Element. My name's Nicole Wales and you're watching Why It Pays to Have Emotionally Intelligent People in Your Business. Ben, welcome back.
Thank you.
So now we've got a good understanding of what emotional intelligence is. I know that you've got a model to share with us now.
So what we were talking about is really the fact that the way we feel influences the way we think, behave and perform. So what is emotional intelligence and why has it become so popular? Emotional intelligence is really a set of skills that help us perceive and understand and effectively respond to emotions.
Okay.
And, because of the way emotions influence us, these skills really just help us make more intelligent responses to the way we feel, to the way others feel. I've put Daniel Goleman's book up here, Emotional Intelligence, Why It Can Matter More Than IQ. This is the most widely read social science book in the world, and for anyone who has become interested in this topic, it's a great place to start reading on it. So my work in emotional intelligence has really been on defining what emotional intelligence looks like, and this is our model of emotional intelligence, which represents 6 core skills, if you like, that are related to underlying emotional abilities. The first one is self-awareness, which is really by definition the skill of perceiving and understanding the way you feel.
Yep.
Your emotional self-awareness, if you like. It's important because of the way emotions influence our thinking, behaviour and performance. If you don't have the self-awareness, you don't have the insight into the way emotions are impacting on your own decisions, behaviour and performance. And that insight is really important to being able to take action to intelligently shift the way you feel or make better decisions, behave in a way that's more engaging, perform in a way that's more commensurate with what you need to achieve.
Do you find self-awareness is often the baseline starting point when it comes to developing emotional intelligence? I know it comes down to the individual and how they go in the assessment and so forth, but do you find if self-awareness is low, generally the results overall are low? Is that the baseline starting point?
I think it is it's a very foundational skill of emotional intelligence. If you want to develop your emotional intelligence, it's a really great starting place. Some people are not naturally high in emotional self-awareness to begin with. Some people are better at emotional awareness of others, by way of example, which is the skill of perceiving and understanding the way others feel. But as a general comment, self-awareness is a very foundational skill.
Got it.
you'll see these words around each of these skills of the model as well. We call these the being states. If you think about the skills as what you should do, well, what are you being when you're emotionally self-aware? Well, we say you're very present rather than disconnected from your own feelings and the way they're influencing your decisions, behaviour and performance.
To continue enjoying this presentation, download BRiN, the world's first business advisor in your pocket. To find out more, visit BRiN.ai or search the App Store today.